Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Blessings Podcast. Today, I have with me Mel Hodges. Mel is retired from the IT business and from Vietnam. He grew up in a place that he says always was, but never should have been, Newark, New Jersey. His neighborhood was like the Sopranos, riddled with crime and chaos. Crazy was the norm. And he survived it by being funny and sociable and making friends with the big guys, he says. And with a little help also from some drugs and some booze from time to time. He's seen a lot of extremes in his life. And now in his late 60s, he wants his story to be a legacy for others. He wants to share light. He wants to share his wisdom, his humor, and his courage, along with a few tips for how to come through the ups and downs of this human experience, still standing like him. Welcome, Mel Hodges, to the show.
Good morning, Mitzi.
Good morning. So let's start out from the very beginning. I'm very familiar with Newark, New Jersey. And so tell us a little bit about what it was like when you were born at that time.
First thing I will do, and I'm sure my friends would appreciate me if I did this, it's pronounced Nork.
No. Okay.
It's phonetically spelled N-O-R-K. Okay.
Okay.
Newark is for those who are not from there. So, good.
So you could tell right away, I am not from there.
You know the imposters as soon as they speak.
That's great. All right, Nork. Tell us about Nork.
Okay. Nork is made up of sections. My section of Nork was called Vailsburg. Okay. Vailsburg, if you want to see what life was like in Vailsburg, you could, as you said earlier, watch an episode of The Sopranos. Sopranos, the Vailsburg section of Newark was basically the mobster section as it was in New York with the families and all that. They ran the place and they were very colorful. That was Vailsburg on that level. Vailsburg was also a neighborhood. It was very crowded. Everyone hung on street corners, fire escapes, schoolyards. You could always go out any time of the day or night and you'd find someone. There were no play dates. Your play date started when you left at 8 o'clock in the morning and came home when the street lights came on. And when the street lights came on and you were younger, you'd better be home. So that was your alarm clock. You didn't get a cell phone call or a text. You just came home. That's what it was like. There were different sections. You had your Italian section, your Irish section, you had your Italian section, you had the guys on the avenue who always got in trouble. You had the guys at Lincoln. Lincoln was the grammar school. We hung out at the playground. There was a hierarchy. Went from the playground to the wall, which is the wall around the grammar school, to the corner as you got older. You stepped up. You got promoted. And you hung out. It was, a lot of times it was boring, but you could always find someone to hang around with and get in trouble with. So that's basically what Vailsburg was like. You had 100 friends and you had 100 enemies. It was, you could almost always see a fight, and you could almost always meet a friend and hang out. Your friends in Vailsburg became lifelong friends. I still see 3 of my friends, the 3 main people I hung out with. They're all my age now. We just got together last month for dinner and a catch up. First time in years. But when you see them, it's like you never stopped hanging with them. It's like time goes back. And so they're lifelong friends because you've been through a lot. You hang together, you smoke together, you get high together, you fight together, you love together, you get everything, and then it goes on forever. And you never lose the the attachment.
The connection, yeah. It sounds like there was a richness to the neighborhood, to the experience.
It was very cultural, and there was a richness. I was raised, my mother was Italian, full Italian. My father was Irish and English. So my grandfather was English and my grandmother was Italian. And you couldn't pour three more volatile subjects into a glass. You just couldn't. The Irish and the Italian were fire and water. My grandmother was very dominant. She ran the household. We all grew up together. My grandparents, my parents, and four kids.
You all lived together in one
Yeah,
house.
for a while, yes.
Mhm.
My grandmother had visions of my father marrying a good Irish girl, and she married a hustling Italian girl. So there was a problem there. Okay. And if I could give you a fast example of how the relationship was, my mother, whom we call Dub, by the way, her nickname is Dub, Dub.
Okay.
So if I refer to her unconsciously, I will use the word Dub. All right. It's a nickname I can explain later, but she was born on St. Patrick's Day. My grandmother being extreme Irish, that was an abomination. And my grandmother made my mother, at least for celebratory terms, change her birthday to the 16th. And would celebrate her birthday on the 16th of March, not on the 17th, because as my grandmother said, no, this is exactly what she said. No damn guinea is going to be born on St. Patrick's Day in my house.
Oh my God.
That's what.
Oh, wow. All right. So that sets the stage. That sets the stage for your family life. What is your earliest memory? The very first thing you can remember in your life?
Very first memory I can remember is, in fact, I know this easy enough. Sometimes I think about it. Uh, For me, my life started on the morning that my my parents, my mom and dad, decided to split and Dub left. That's my earliest memory of anything at all. Okay. And I remember that because I was actively involved in it. I I think I was 5 or 6. My sister Annie, who is the keeper of the family history in her brain, thinks it was 6 or 7. That's irrelevant. But now that morning came. There was always a lot of disagreements between them and my grandparents, especially my grandmother. I was under a lot of pressure all the time because my grandmother, whose name is Sadie, so I might refer to her as Sadie also. Okay.
Okay.
We really didn't want her there. She wanted her Bobby all to herself. So eventually Dub gave in to pressure. Plus, I think she wanted to be off and running. And she was upstairs in the bedroom. I was downstairs. And for whatever reason, I went upstairs. I was climbing the steps, going upstairs. You go down the hall to her room, and she's standing in her room. Now, the bed was higher than a normal bed. I couldn't see over the bed. But she was doing something on the bed. And then I greeted her, and she saw me. And she said hi. She greeted me, and I asked her what she's doing. And I remember she came down, she knelt down by me, and she said, she called me Bobby. I'm the third, by the way. There's a Melvin Senior, Melvin Junior, and Melvin the third. I was little Bobby in the house to distinguish us. And she said, oh, Bobby, mommy has to go away for a while. And I said, for how long? And she's talking to me, and she said, about a month. I didn't know what a month was. I was young, but it was feasible. And then we talked for for a minute or so. I'm not really sure. And then I went downstairs and I left and she left. And then for a while, I don't know for how long after that, I have an older sister. Her name is Sarah. I would go up to Sarah and I would ask Sarah, I would say, is a month up yet? Is a month up yet? Is a, over for a long time, of course, a month was like years away. Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess eventually I stopped asking. But that's my first memory of life. And then it went on from there with my grandparents and my dad and my father and the four of us in the house. She was gone for a long time. But I could now give you another example of Sadie's dominance. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There came a day that Dub was going to visit. Okay. I don't know how long it was before she left and she came. It was a long time. So she was coming. My grandmother had adopted the role, which I think she always probably wanted, of she was taking care of his mother. Okay.
Yeah.
The morning came and she was going to come over, and we were waiting for her. My grandmother called us in, and she told us, okay, the mother's coming shortly, but when she gets here, you cannot call her mom. You have to call her Aunt Aggie. And you will also, in the future, call me, herself, Grandma Mommy. So that's just the level of the dominance that Sadie had. So that's how we never really called her mom. We called her usually by her first name, which was Agnes, and until she got a nickname from a friend of mine in our teens or whatever, of Dub. Dub was a very colorful and extravagant girl. She was raised in orphanages, and I learned how to hustle and how to con and how to get by in that way. That's how she ran her life. And she's very likable, but she, if she told you anything, see, we didn't have Google back then, so we couldn't fact check her, okay?
Yeah.
But
Right.
that would have helped, okay? She was a con artist, and I can. She was seeing this guy one time. He was older than her, and his name was Pete, I think. Anyway, he was retired. She was in his 60s. He was in his 80s. And we knew he was helping her out. He was making sure he gave her money because they all gave her money because that's what she did. That's how she got by. One day I got a letter from him, and it was 3 or 4 pages of a document of all the money in checks and cash he had given her in a period of 2 years. Just a list. I called him up and I said, okay, why did you send me this? And he called me Bobby then. He said, oh, Bobby, I didn't mean it to upset you or to bother you. I just wanted you to know that I'm taking good care of your mother and she's okay. And my first thought was, Peter, I'm wondering here who's taking care of whom. The total amount of money in that letter in 2 years was over $200,000 that he gave her. So that's how she ran her life.
Mm.
But if you met her, you would instantly love her. She was that kind of a person. She was, she would also, if how I put her into perspective as a person is. It's a little harsh, but Dub is the kind of person who would give you the shirt off her back if you needed it, but she would scrape the skin off your bones if she needed it. That's how I refer to her. Anything to survive. So that was like the early, and then life went on. Of course, the house was in upheaval a lot. See, this is where I don't know how far. I don't want to bum your listeners.
No,
Okay.
it's good. Listen, so let me just ask you some questions then. First of all, how did Dub get her nickname? What was the circumstances? Where'd that come from?
I was in my backyard with my friend. Now, to give you a backstory on that, in Newark, on my block anyway, the one of the guys on my block was the master at arms for the pagan motorcycle gang, and they would all assemble at his house, and they would deal drugs to us. They dealt us this kind of pot, and they called it killer weed, and it was marijuana laced with embalming fluid, and it made you trip and screwed you up. A lot of people, it messed up bad. But anyway, that's what they would sell to us. So the reason I tell you that is because, so my mom, being as nutty as she was, like wild and funny, we were in the backyard this one day, me and my friend, and we were standing on the porch and watching her in the backyard. And she was on a ladder. It was really windy. We had lilac bushes in the yard, and they were high. She was on this ladder trying to cut some lilacs off the top of the bush. Okay. And me and my friend are watching her. And the wind is waving and the ladder is waving. And she's screaming, Bobby, help me. I'm trying to get this lilacs. And she's making all this noise. And Flip turns to me and he says, now that's killer weed. Okay. So then we started calling her because the name for killer weed, because that was the street name, killer weed, was KW. That's what we called it when we wanted to get it. So we nicknamed her KW. That became K Dub. And that became Dub.
Gotcha.
So and I've always referred to her as Dub. In fact, one time I was in marriage counseling. I was talking to the counselor in a singles thing. And I referred to that. And he wanted to know, why do you call her Dub? So I told him the whole story. And he said, why don't you call her Mom? I said, because I never called her Mom. He said, you should call her Mom. I said, no, I shouldn't. And he said, I want you to call her Mom. And I don't want to call her Mom. It doesn't fit. And he said, do me a favor, go home and call her Mom. And I said, okay, but I'm going to get hurt. I'm telling you right now. He said, okay, just do it. It'll be fine. So I did. So I called her. So I called her on the phone. And I said, hi, Mom, how are you? And there was a pause. And she said, I'm okay, Bobby. And we talked. And I said something else to you when I finished with, okay, Mom. And there was a pause again. And she answered my question. Okay. And then the third or fourth time I said it, she snapped at me. And she said, Bobby, why are you calling me Mom? Call me Dub. She said, so I went back to the psychiatrist or guy, whatever the hell it was, and I said it didn't work. All right, I told you it wasn't going to work. So that's and it's always been for me. It's always been she grew to like it. In fact, I once bought her a ID bracelet, a solid silver one, really nice and expensive, for her wrist. It said Dub on it, and she loved it. Mm-hmm. One day she lost it. And we're looking all around the house. She's looking with us all over everywhere, in all kinds of places. It could not possibly be, but she's all upset. We could never find that bracelet until I realized where the bracelet probably was. And that was probably in a pawn shop, as they say. See, I say the word porn, P-A-W-N, and people think I say porn, P-O-R-N. They do it all the time.
Pawn, Pawn
Yeah,
for
and
the
I said, like I
listeners.
told
Oh
him,
my gosh. Wow,
that's
that's quite a story.
there's so many more.
Yeah, I know. I wonder, like, how did little Bobby feel about that? Like, how about that being your mom? Do you remember?
I was, and you can ask my sister, I was Dub's Patsy. Okay. She could get anything out of me. I believed everything she said.
Mm.
I defended her. Even when I got hurt by doing it, I told you she would. I'll tell you another story about it. Okay, is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yeah.
We had a lot of Italians, of course, in my neighborhood. We had a lot. We had a lot of mobsters and that kind of persona. And we there was one person. Let's call him John. But anyway, he was a drug runner. He was a hitman, and he was a soldier with one of the families. Okay, big guy. And we knew him from the neighborhood, and my mom knew his mom. Like I said, if my mom wanted something, money was no object. Okay, she wanted a car. She needed $5,000 for a car. She didn't have $5,000. She didn't have 5,000 cents or pennies or anything. So she went to John, and she convinced John that my grandfather was a part owner in the company he worked at, and he was retiring that year, and he was getting a whole boatload of money when he retired. And she wanted John to loan her $5,000 to buy a car. He was a loan shark. He did. He was big and he's strong, but might not have been very smart. Okay? He did. She got her car and she stiffed him. She never had any intention of paying him. My grandfather was not a part owner of everything. He was an accountant. He got he when he retired, he got a small check, some kind of check. It was useless. And but so now she had a problem. Now she couldn't pay back John. John had a problem because he couldn't do anything about it. Because mainly because she was a woman. There's nothing John could do to her. And he was probably quite embarrassed by the whole thing in front of his group.
Mm-hmm.
So he kept calling, harassing, and calling. He wanted his money. He would call me because I knew him from the area, and he would call me. He wants his money. Now, I'll give you an example. With Johnny, this one day, he calls us over to his mother's apartment, who lived across the hall from Dub, and we go to meet him about the money. And he comes in the apartment, and he's talking to us, and he said to my mother and me, much to my mother, he called her Marie. He said, Marie, you know my wife? Yes. Did you see the wedding ring on my wife's hand? Yes, Johnny. Do you know how I got that money? No. And he said, point blank, I killed people for that money. That's how she got that ring. I want my $5,000 or I'm going to take care of you. That's what he said. And then he left. Okay. Time went on and Johnny stopped harassing us, just stopped for a long period of time. So one day he comes to my front door and he says, Melvin, your mother called me and told me that you have my $5,000 and all I have to do is come over and get it. I said, Johnny, what the F are you talking about? Okay, what? That's what she said. And give me my $5,000. Johnny, I don't know what you're talking about. I haven't seen my mother in a long time. She called me this morning and told me to come over and get the $5,000. And then he says, come on outside. I want to talk to you. So it was my house. I came outside and I was talking to him. He showed me pictures of his kids and he's having this nice conversation with me. And, you know, he puts his wallet away. And then just like a flash of light, he just slammed me in the face. And when I looked up, he was getting back in his car and he said to me, he said, and tell your mother I did that. And then he drove away. And that was, but my mother got her car. That's what I was trying to make the point of. As good a person as she could have been, she was. She also had that I want what I want way about her. She was in and out all the time of our lives, all the time, come and go. She'd get kicked out of the house, then she'd come back, kicked out of the house, then she'd come back, and stuff like that. But again, to know her just in her natural state was to love her. She was funny. She not a care in the world. Everybody chasing her, but she didn't care. She lived in the moment, 100%. This is what's happening right now. This is my problem right now. That's how she
she
lived.
was.
That's how she lived her life. I credit her with my abilities to get along with people, with my abilities to get people to like me, to do business with me, my sense of humor, developing that, my sense of humor and that kind of stuff, because as outgoing as I am now and as I developed, because I stuttered a lot as a kid, a lot. I stuttered so much. This guy in my 8th grade class, he signed my autograph book at the end of the 8th grade to go into high school. He signed it. I hate this kid. He signed it. Good luck, high school.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Wow.
what he wrote in my yearbook. Yeah, in my yearbook. Yeah, that was. In fact, I was just looking at it the other day. I was going through stuff, and that's what he wrote in my yearbook. And I was very quiet and everything else back then.
Yeah.
But
Just in a few words, how would you describe your dad?
I'll describe my dad in 2 words, but I won't say one of them. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Effing awful.
Okay.
I can give you an example of that.
Yeah. Okay.
There are 4 kids in my family. We all have our own house. Okay. And we never talked about this. Okay. We never said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Okay. To my knowledge, and after being in other houses, none of us have a picture of him anywhere in our house. And we never talked about that. It's something we all just never did. He was a big guy. He was a mom's boy. Sadie made him a mom's boy, 100%. He had glaucoma and he didn't see very well, but he wouldn't stop driving to the point where he knocked down the back porch of the house when he backed into it, knocked it down, backed into the side of the house another time, kept on going, never stopped driving, kind of person he was. There were lots of other things he would like I guess we all have stories. And this is why I prefaced in the beginning about how detailed you want to go. I'm very concerned with being like coming across as whining. I have this vision and a way of seeing as unpopular. I think today they call it toxic masculinity. Okay. And I think I am toxic masculinity because I'm
Really?
very conscious about any emotional responses, showing a weakness in regard to whining about something or
Mhm.
crying about something,
Mm.
and because I think people are going to judge that as, oh, shut up.
I don't see it that way. I think when you're going through, it helps people understand your life and why you are the way you are today, which is, so let's talk about that. You had a tough life as a kid, right? We get that. But as for some reason, you turned out to be a person who cares about other people, a person who is funny, a person who easily builds rapport and comes up to people. That's how we met, because you came up and started talking to me, very charming and very personable. So how do you think you got to be the person that you are, who finds relationships easier now, who is able to provide joy for other people in with your comedy and things that you do?
Do you think it could possibly be brain damage caused by the 70s?
From what?
From the 70s.
From the 70s, like
From the
the
70s, yeah.
decade itself, or the killer
That,
weed?
that decade, yeah. And
Okay.
there were, we, well, I like to compare the 70s in my area to what goes on today in the drug culture.
Mhm.
Is on my street corner, I just as a point of reference, you could probably have every, just say, 20th car that would pass our corner would pull over and try to sell us a different drug, a, a, a different one, like they weren't all the same. Today you have a few, 4 or 5 different. You got they're worse. You got your crack and your heroin and this and that. But in the 70s, we had acid, and we had 4 different kinds of acid. We had mescaline, 3 different kinds of mescaline, an untold number of kinds of pot. It was all different. It was a drugstore. It was, you could go shopping. Okay, so we remember the commercials. Give it to Mikey when there was something that somebody didn't want to eat. Give it to Mikey.
Yeah, he likes everything.
If there was a drug somebody didn't want to take, they could give it to Melvin.
Okay.
Okay, so that's how it was
So
a
you
joke.
coped, so you were using that as a coping mechanism.
Yeah, and of
Yeah.
course we used to drink Gallo port wine.
Yeah.
Me and my friends, because it was like 69 cents a pint. And,
Is that the one that comes in the straw bottom? It has
no, no, no. We don't even make it anymore. It's a grape wine. It's a very dark grape wine. It comes in a pint bottle. It's 69 cents. You have to drink it ice cold. It has to be ice cold. Not only that, when you drink Gallo port wine, you have to take. We had to buy a pint of wine and a pint of lemonade. The lemonade was the chaser for
okay.
every sip because it was that bad. You had to
It's so
chase it
bad.
down with lemonade.
Oh my gosh.
That's what
Yeah.
we drank all the time.
Yeah. So
That was our.
you did a lot of numbing, and that was your coping mechanism. It's totally understandable. And then I know that you have said that you were in Vietnam. How did you end up there?
I joined the Navy right out of high school. I guess as a way to get off the corner.
Mhm.
Um, and I figured I'd get away from drugs and alcohol in the Navy. That was wrong. It was still the 70s, and there was
Mm,
still just as much in the Navy, just as much. I was on the aircraft carrier, the Coral Sea. We were stationed out of Alameda, California, and we were at where we, as in terms of a fleet of ships, we led the evacuation of Vietnam.
okay.
Okay, so we were at the evacuation of Vietnam, which is now, just now, come back to haunt me, and
Mhm.
and we'll get to that, maybe. But that's how. Now, for years and years after that. And if you talk to any Vietnam veterans, they don't talk about Vietnam.
Yeah.
They don't talk to anybody else except themselves about Vietnam. And it's not so much because it was such a bad experience there, although it was. It's more what happened to us and the climate for us when we came back home.
Mm.
When they come home today, like the other veterans, they're welcomed home. We weren't welcomed home. We were we were insulted. We were called names. We couldn't wear our uniforms because you wouldn't be attacked. You'd be like yelled at. Vietnam veterans in airports when they got off the planes, they were spit on. They were called baby killers and stuff like that. That's why they don't talk about it. It's not. It's partially because of the experience also, but it's also because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So then, as time goes on, now it's gotten a little bit better. People talk about it more, but really, Vietnam veterans talk to other Vietnam veterans about Vietnam. I don't push it on anybody. Very few people know about it until when I started doing comedy. Is when I started putting it on my cards, on my business cards. Vietnam service veteran.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to go into something else here first. Okay.
Yeah.
I mentioned that because it's one of the things I wanted to talk about. I mentioned that it's come back to haunt me just now. By that, I was on the aircraft carrier, as I said. We were about 12 miles, less than 12 miles, off the coast of Vietnam, running missions, planes flying, people coming back and forth and stuff like that. And but up until 2019, no one gave any real notice to that in terms of if you weren't in country on land in Vietnam, they assumed you were not exposed to Agent Orange. That's changed now. In 2019, they passed some stuff, did something. If you were less than 12 miles off the coast of Vietnam during wartime activities, you're you are assumed to have been exposed to Agent Orange. Okay, meaning you get those care and stuff like that. The reason I bring that up is when the Coral Sea was decommissioned and taken apart, the people who took it apart, they just the word is and they noticed that the Coral Sea was loaded with Agent Orange, just all over it, everywhere. And that's because the planes would fly back and forth into Vietnam. They'd fly through Agent Orange and they'd come back to our ship. They'd wash off the planes and then all that stuff would get tracked.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The reason I'm going into all that explanation is as time went on and they determined all these different illnesses related to Agent Orange. Now, although it's not recognized yet as a predetermined condition related to Agent Orange, the trend is and the pattern is twice as many Vietnam veterans that were on Yankee Station, which is 12 miles or closer to Vietnam, have developed dementia as opposed to those Navy people who were not. Okay. So that's a study now. Okay. And although I can't say definitively I am very recently diagnosed with early stage dementia. And although I can't say it's related to Agent Orange 100%, but it's a study.
Yeah.
So
They know it's happening.
and so that's just that was back in June.
Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
That's and I was listening to your other woman who was the wife of an early stage dementia person. I don't know her name.
Yeah.
Uh,
Christina.
Christina, and I wanted to pass on too. It was very enlightening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very enlightening. Didn't want to pass that on. So that's what we're dealing with that as of right now. And not a lot of people know about that yet, of course, but they will. I don't know. And to change subjects for a minute here, over the years, and even on the corner, as you said in the introduction, I got in and out of Newark by making friends with the big guys and being funny, I had no idea until last week. I got this big box in my house where I used to throw all my old memorabilia in through life. It's a big old cart, and it's got all kinds of cards and letters, and it's got a hash pipe in it and everything else, all from the 70s. Okay. So it's like a time capsule. Okay. And
Okay.
I have all these letters from when I was in the Navy that I didn't know anything about. And so many people, when I was in the Navy from the corner, wrote letters to me. And I was floored because I didn't think half of them could write, personally speaking. But yeah, and so I didn't realize it until I read all those letters. But my personality got developed as escapism and wanting to be outside, wanting to be on the corner, wanting to just fit in. And of course, I got a lot of it from Dub. Now, I got my ability to see, some mothers will teach their kids how to go to work, how to be honest, how to be a good person. Dub taught me how to lie, cheat, and steal.
Yeah.
Okay. And I learned that very well, how to do that. And I'm good at it. I used to be anyway. I credit her for, although I have a lack of education, I was able to do what I wanted to do. I was able to get into business. I was able to get married, have kids, and do all that stuff. I still have friends. And, but think about a house where people grow up, where I grew up, and in my house, and the things that happen. And I think everyone is like this. You think that what you are living through is normal. This is the norm. Everybody is going through this. You don't see yourself or your situation as different.
Right.
And that's why, can you hold on one second?
Yeah, get that. Go ahead.
Crazy goddamn neighbor. She wouldn't stop ringing the bell. Oh my God. Then we'll go back in time. I'm sure you'll bounce this around, but both my parents spent time in jail. My dad told you he was a big man. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he tried to rob a cab driver with a toy gun And he resisted. And my dad got scared and tried to run away, but he was too fat to run away. And he got caught. And he went to jail for that.
Mm.
Dub went to jail for fraud, stuff like that. When, this is funny, when she got arrested for the final time, we got a call. She wanted us to give her bail to get out. So, okay, all right, we'll get you out. So we called that precinct. We find out her bail is like $100, which is a lot of money in the 70s. Okay, so I said, okay, look, I got the bail money. I'll come down and I'll get her. And the person on the phone says, okay, you can do that. But when you do that, we have to then transfer her to Caldwell because there's a warrant for her there. I said, okay. And then he says, and if you pay that, we have to transfer her to Sussex. And then we have to transfer her to another one. And then we have to transfer her to Atlantic City. So it ended up there was like 12 or 13 different places that had warrants out for her. So we couldn't get her out because there were too many warrants. The bail bondsman wouldn't carry her because there were too many warrants for her arrest. So that's just a little anecdotal thing about.
Yeah. Were your grandparents there for you when this is going on?
My grandfather was always at work. He was a great man. He was a good man. I modeled myself after him. My grandmother was in my father's corner. No matter what, like he could do no wrong. And in line with that, I have a story for you, of course. Would you like a story?
I would, sure, tell it.
Okay. We were getting ready for school. And this is a pretty harsh story, but it ends with how you're going to see how my grandmother felt about him. We were having breakfast in the kitchen. Sadie was cooking breakfast. My father was upstairs. For whatever reason, he got up, he came downstairs, and he got in an argument with my grandmother over money. He wanted money, and she wasn't giving it to him. And he got really mad at her. And he, actually, the first time he saw it, he started choking her in the kitchen. My brother Danny, who was 10 months younger than me, he jumped up and he charged at my father, and my father backhanded him and knocked him out. I didn't do anything. I was frozen solid at the kitchen table. I was just frozen with a butter knife in my hand. I never forgot that.
How old were you?
We were probably in the 7th grade, somewhere around there. The point of this is my grandmother, after it all ended, swore us to secrecy not to tell my grandfather. I did, because I thought I was sticking up for her. And the next morning, on the way out the door for school, Sadie stopped me, and I thought she was gonna thank me. She just said to me, she said, "You're on my shit list," because I told my grandfather. So that's how Sadie was with my father. There was nothing that could be done wrong there. I know my sisters have other stories and stuff, but I think some of them are a little too deep for you.
Yeah. It sounds to me like you got your nurturing, you got your sense of love from the people on the street, from your friends on the street.
Yes.
The guys that sent you the letters when you were in the Navy. That's where you got your sense of connection and love and relationship?
When my father died, I was 16 or 17. He died of some kind of a brain hemorrhage or something, but we laid him out the old Irish way in the living room of our house for 3 days.
Wow.
His coffin there. And during the whole time, I was out on the corner and on the schoolyard with my friends. Because that's, as you just said, that was where I needed to be.
Yeah.
He just had to go sooner the better kind of thing. But yeah, so that's validates your point where my friendships and my strengths came from the people on the corner, all through like those kind of people would come in and out of my life when I needed them.
So,
I think that how I kind of run things is when there's a change in my life, I just wait because I know something else is coming. Like I don't like if I lose a job, I'll just wait for the next one or next. It's gonna come. Think if I need something, it's gonna come. That's just my belief. Where I won't get into an elongated. Oh my God, what do we do next? Kind of thing. It's more I just wait and I know whatever the power is, it's gonna present itself. And
yeah. So you have a sense of hope and kind of faith that things will work out.
whatever I need will be sent somehow in some way. It will be sent.
Yeah.
And I actually, I bank on that.
Yeah.
Like bank on that. It's gonna happen. So
Yeah.
it's a little frustrating for some people at times, but I just wait.
And has that always worked out for you? Has it always worked? Things have always,
My perception is that it always worked out.
yeah.
Yes, that's my perception. It was Newark was a lot of fun. I'm not getting Newark was just uh, hilarious night after night when I was there. The things that happened didn't happen anywhere else at all. The characters, the personalities got high. The downside to Nork or Vailsburg section of Nork, if you ask anyone from Vailsburg what was Vailsburg like, they will tell you it's the best place in the world. Vailsburg was just great. Oh my God, it was just great. I had one friend say to me once, he said, I would give a pinky just to go back to Vailsburg for one day. Okay. That's how much they have an affinity for it. Okay. And where I don't see that is, I never tell them, is it was a fun place, because there were no rules. Nobody watched us. Nobody cared about us. Nobody made sure that we were okay. Nothing. If you look back on Vailsburg and you look at the other side and you count up the number of kids who didn't get out of Vailsburg because of all different forces, you might see that it wasn't the place you think it was. It was drug ridden, it was crime ridden, it was alcohol ridden. We started getting high at 14, didn't stop till 44. That was me. How many drug overdoses and all that kind of stuff. It was just,
Yeah.
and for as much as we want to look at it as a great place, it was at times it was distressing. It was like, because how many of us went to college? 2 or 3%?
Mhm.
That's all. How many got kicked out of school? 5 or 6%? I got kicked out of 2 high schools. Okay. And that was just because there were no rules.
Mhm.
They were just, and then you go home to your house. That was, mine wasn't the only one. I call my block the block of bad parenting.
Yeah.
That's what I call it. And it's just the way it was. But
Yeah.
there's this one afternoon, one evening, Johnny Burns' this kid's house across the street from the playground. This is one of these things. It caught fire. Okay, so the house went up on fire. Okay, so we're all on the corner and we're all enjoying ourselves in the house. And the house catches fire, and the firemen, they weren't there yet. So someone said that this kid John is in the house. Okay, he's in the house, and these three guys, as high as they could be, take it and get it in their head that they're going to save Johnny. Okay, so they go running into the burning house to find Johnny. Johnny's not in there. Okay, he wasn't in there. Someone said so. These guys are now in the house, and they're lost in the house, and there's smoke all over the house. On the front of the house, there was the dining room. Okay, of the house, it was like a bay window. So we're all standing out front, and they got lost in the house, but they could see through the window. They could see lights. All right. So then, just in an instant, you hear this big freaking crash, and out through that window come those three guys. They dove through the front window of the house out onto the street to get out of the fire that they put the stuff in. It was one of the funniest things ever.
Oh my
We were
God.
saying that, and we are laughing, and it was just Johnny wasn't in there.
Oh my gosh. Crazy times. That's crazy stuff. So
Like,
just tell me, you have your own kids now. What kind of things did you learn about how to be a good parent from not having good parents?
okay, when my kids were young, I was still drinking. Okay, and although I went to all the games, I was a scout leader, all that kind of stuff. I used to think that, and I really thought this, being a father should be easy. If I just do the opposite of what my dad did, I'll be fine. That was my thought. And but I still had the forces of K Dub inside of me. Okay.
Mm.
I was still out. I was partying and I was drinking. And so I wasn't as good as I could have or should have been. Kathy, my wife Kathy, was. She was very good at her assigned task. Okay. She was a good mom, and she was the backbone when I was like out.
Yeah.
So when I tried to give them time, and I did when I was in the zone, I hung out with them, I listened to them because nobody listened to me. I wouldn't belittle them ever because I know you shouldn't do it. That's a bad thing. I learned that from my dad. Don't do that. Doing the opposite of him. I learned, and knock wood right now, they're both good. Lauren has a lot of her grandmother in her, and that concerns us. And my son Adam has a lot more of Kathy in him. Like Kathy and Adam obey all the rules,
Mm.
and they live right down the center lane of the street, whereas me and Lauren are all over the place. Okay, but they're not in jail and they're not on the pole. What are you going to do? I tried to be as present as I could, but I did. I was out a lot, and I ran around, so I have some feelings about that.
But you did better. You did better, and every generation gets better, right?
See, yeah, that's my theory, and my theory is that okay now, and I'll think about him. I haven't said this to him yet, but says, look, Adam. I one time says, look, Adam. Your grandparents sucked, okay? So I was a little bit better than that. I got the Hodges name back a little bit further. Now it's up to you to get the Hodges name the rest of the way. I want to dump the touchdown on him. I did the best I could do.
Oh,
So that's what I
yeah,
want to say to him. That's because
yeah,
he's the only guy left.
yeah, yeah. He can do it. He can
You
do
know,
it. So just tell us about your comedy. How did that come about that you started doing comedy shows? What do
sure.
they look like? What do your comedy shows look like? Tell
The
us a
comedy,
joke. Can you tell us a joke?
I'm not gonna tell you. No. Okay, comedy shows. We about 8 or 9 years ago, my my family gave me as a gift a comedy training class at Steel Stacks.
Oh,
And it's 6 weeks long. You write your own material, and they teach you stage presence and stuff like that. And then there's a recital or show at the end. Okay, so I took that. It was a lot of fun, and then I did some improv stuff also out of that. But, and then I'd go to some mics and stuff like that, open mics. I'd try it and all, and I started to see the landscape, how it worked, and all that kind of stuff. And I realized that I'm not going to be a comedian. They travel all over the country. They'll drive from here to Atlantic City for a 5 minute mic just to be on stage.
mm,
I don't have the time of my life for that because that's not where this is going. But I'm a businessman because I have my business, and that's what. And I figured if I can't do that, maybe I can just put on the show or
mhm.
produce the show. And that's where the money is anyway. It's not in being a comic, and I could use my skills for that. So I started trying that. Like I'm sure I got some friends. I met some of the comedians and all that. We started doing shows. And of course, they were terrible in the beginning because you're trying to work things out. And they were just terrible. And I got myself a partner. Mistake number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Don't get a partner. Okay. And we started the company. It was called White Elephant Entertainment Duo. And our acronym was WEED.
Okay.
Okay. WED. Okay, that was our acronym. Okay, and my partner, he's a great guy. I really liked him, but we had a lot of many issues in the way we approached the business in general. To me, to, my, to him, he was an entertainer all his life. He was a DJ and stuff. So I figured he knows all this stuff. Yeah, he'll be an asset. He did know some of it, but for him, and I get it. A good show was when everybody comes out and has a great time. Okay,
Mhm.
that's a good show. For me, a good show was everybody comes out, has a great time, and we make money.
Yeah.
Okay, that was our difference, and that was our falling out. Okay,
Okay.
but he's a great guy, and he moved on. I moved on, and stuff like that. No hard feelings anymore. Then I stopped doing comedy through COVID, of course, and I just because I didn't think I wanted to do it anymore because it bothered me that it failed the way it did. But then
Mm.
I was thinking I couldn't get it out of my head, so I started up again on my own, and we called it In Your Face Entertainment. It's a Jersey name, okay? And we call it Iffy, IYFE. We call it Iffy Entertainment, okay?
Okay.
And we started putting on shows around here. I put on, and now as it's evolved, our show consists of 3 comedians out of Philly or New Jersey or New York. They're real comedians. They're on the road. They're they they live it. We put it on with them. Sometimes I'll host it. Sometimes I won't host it, and I put on the show. But then and when I first started up, also I figured also it could also be a vessel for
Yeah.
raising some money and stuff like that. As part of our model, I built in that every show is a fundraiser.
Hmm.
So we look for groups that want
Hmm.
fundraising,
Yeah.
and we're getting better at that. You got to be careful with the groups you pick because some show and some don't show. They have
Mhm.
to show. That's part of the plan is to if you do it for a group, they're going to bring people. You
Right.
know
Yeah.
that's going to help too. And they get a percentage of the profit. They get 35% of the profit.
Mhm.
is what I
That's
give to.
good. So you're producing comedy now and helping to raise money for good causes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So that's your giving back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we do.
And
And
it probably feels good to be around all that, to be around laughter and people enjoying themselves.
it's yes, it's a way to get out. It's a way to stay
Yeah.
social.
Yeah.
For me, I want to stay social. We struggled a lot, well, we still do, but now with social media and getting our name out, because I don't know that stuff and it's not my way. I just met a company also that will probably hook up with to do that, Iconics, and that will help us a lot because
Yeah.
it can be really hard if you're doing it all manually and you don't have to do that. On show night, it's a good night, it's a good night out, and I really enjoy it. It raises money, everybody's good, all the comedians are good and all that kind of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. I'm retired now, of course, and I don't want to be in a house, and I'm not going to get a job unless I
So it's a
actually.
good way of being social and doing something good for the community and also getting out. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what you think are the biggest lessons you've learned. You've had a very interesting, very full life. And I know you've got a lot of good things to share out of some of the adversity that you've faced. So, what are your biggest lessons that you've learned in life?
I'm trying to say this stuff as succinctly as I can. I learned that your family doesn't necessarily live in your house.
Mm.
I have brothers and sisters that I rarely see, rarely. And I have friends that I see often.
Yeah.
I learned that things will pass if you wait for them to pass. If you're bothered by something, it will pass. If you wait for it to do, you don't always, you. My sister once was talking to someone and she described me to them. The person said, your brother Bobby lives in the minute. And my sister said, no, he doesn't live in a minute. My brother Bobby lives in the second.
Oh.
That's where people need to live.
Huh.
And I think that this is a terrible thing.
Mm. Yeah.
I think that I you as hard as it is to do, you don't have to, I don't feel anyway, you don't have to forgive people,
Mm.
but you have to move past it. If someone hurts you and it bothers you and it stays in your head and it beats you down, it might not be bothering them at all.
That's right.
They may not even be thinking about it ever again, but you are.
It's
You
only
don't,
hurting you. Yeah.
you don't have to forgive that person if it's bad or whatever. Like my dad, you don't have to forgive him, but you have to get past him.
Yeah.
And so I've learned that. I've been trying this brand new thing, by the way.
What's
It's
that?
called it's called honesty. Have you heard of it? It's brand new to
I
me.
I have.
You have heard of it?
I
Yeah, me
have.
too. It's amazing.
I
It
like
really,
it.
you don't have to think about your lies anymore.
That's right. You don't have to play the game. You could just
Don't
be.
have. What did I say to him? Don't have to do that anymore. So
Yep.
I'm trying that. Okay.
Yeah.
Although it's still in the experimental phase, I'm doing documentation. It's in beta testing.
That is, there you go. See, you did tell a joke.
There you go. So it's in beta testing. So I did learn that. Be honest, but not to a fault. You don't have to be honest to the point of hurting someone else.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can be honest to a point of being feeling good and everything else, and people deserve the truth.
Yeah.
But and I also learned, and if someone doesn't call you who you think should call you, don't get mad. Pick up the phone and call them. Even if you call twice, so what? Or 3 times, so what?
Mm,
Call. It's just not their way. But if you get mad or stop talking to them, you're only hurting yourself.
yeah.
Okay. If you hurt somebody, I've hurt my wife. Ask for forgiveness, but if you don't get it, that's okay. You asked, you did your part, and you will feel better for that.
Yeah.
So that's what I.
Those are excellent lessons. Wow. Those are fantastic, Mel. So, what about your blessings? What do you think you are the most grateful for in life?
I'm great. I would say I'm grateful that I'm actually in the recent past. Now, as I said, we just had that dinner with my 3 friends. Yeah,
Hmm.
and we haven't really been in contact. We've been in contact, not going out together for years and years. And I hooked that up, and then we have another one at the end of this month. So I would say I'm grateful that we got back together. And
Yeah.
that goes along with don't like if they don't call you, call them. That's what that goes along with.
Yeah.
Because it's just life. So I'm grateful I'm back in touch with them, and we're actually going out. We had such a blast.
That's great.
Um,
That's
I'm
great.
great. I'm grateful that as much guilt as I can make myself carry for my kids, I'm grateful that they're both good. As I said, as the country song says, trying to keep my kid out of jail, my son out of jail, and my girl off the pole. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, and I did that.
You
Okay,
did that. So they're
so
good.
that's a star. It's a gold
Good.
star right
That's
there.
right. That's good.
And that I wasn't a good husband, and I was a good father to a point, but I'm grateful that now at this stage I can accept that, and I can say, okay, that was then. Who am
Mhm.
I now? And
Yeah.
if you want forgiveness from someone and they don't want to give it to you, that's on them. It's not
Yeah.
on you. Don't chase it.
Yeah.
Don't let someone beat you down with it and make you think that you owe them because you don't.
Yeah.
So that's really what I guess I've learned, and best I could
Wow.
put it anyway. And
That's
now I can,
really, that's so profound. Those are just beautiful things that you just went through. That whole list is, you could write a whole book about that. It's beautiful. Thank you.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
No,
I'm grateful that you have shared all these things with us. I know there's a million more things we could dig into with your life if we had the whole day.
it's
You
simply
should write a book. I think you need to write a memoir.
the stories, Mitzi. Oh
I
my
will
God.
start writing them down. Do you write them down?
I write. I like to write. I
Or
do
just dictate
write.
them into you could dictate them into a voice
Yeah,
message. I would love that. That would make a great book for your legacy.
it would be nice. We'll
It
see.
would be nice.
I do think about it a lot, but then I doubt myself. Right now, I have to deal with this other thing anyway. This thing in my head now, which I got to figure out.
I wish you all the best
It's
luck with
all good.
that.
Uh-huh.
And I know there's a lot of new research coming out and there's some things you can do. I wish you all the best with it.
I'm very flattered that you had me on.
You're so
Once you
sweet.
very
You're a very kind, nice person. I know you beat yourself up, but man, you really, your honesty is kicking in, I think, unless you've been pulling my leg the whole time.
it's give me time. It's brand new. Okay.
I love it. All right.
I'm
Thanks
wrapping my
again,
head
Mel.
around it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.